Well, I can't, end this interview without asking you about your father, because he combines. This is a very cool thing I discovered. He combines my two favorite things: professional wrestling and Freemasonry. Your pops was not only a Mason, not only a great man from what you told me, but also a professional wrestler from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Did he? Was he from Kentucky, or did he just wrestle in Kentucky?
He come from halfway Kentucky. Of course, that's where he grew up, and I lived a little bit of my early life there, but I was born here. But he started wrestling, I think, probably about the time that he'd come to Paducah, and he wrestled all across Kentucky, which is a pretty good ways. I mean, from one end to the other. But he was up in the hills and of the eastern Kentucky, and then around here, and over in Illinois, down in Nashville and whatever, and he did a lot of TV stuff and everything. But a lot of this was the 50s when he did this. So it wasn't like today with the TV the way it is now. You got 1,000 channels. He only had 3. And certainly didn't have the big federations like that. But he was really ahead of his time in some ways, in that he was.
What was his what was his name? What did he wrestle as?
He wrestled under the name King Cobra, and I'll send you some pictures of this. He has a big sequence all the way down, floor length thing, and on the back it's got this cobra in different colors, but it's all gold sequence, hand done. His boots or wrestling shoes, whatever, they had snakes up the side of them. He had these, of course he would take them off right before, but he would walk out and he would have, there was these snake bracelets kind of thing that curled up on one side and went back around. I don't know where he found them. And snake earrings. I mean, he was total snake. And I think he had something on his trunks also as well. He was the bad guy. And that's what he liked. He liked whipping the crowd up into anger. And there have been several times that somebody would pull a gun in the eastern part of Kentucky and put it and said, don't treat my cousin that way. So I said, what'd you do? He goes, well, next time he took a swing, I went down for the count. And then there was one time he would take a little razor that just had a little tip out, not much, and he would grab his head, but he would cut right into a little wrinkle or whatever. And he said it really didn't hurt, didn't do any damage. He said, but you would bleed profusely. And he said, had this one woman said, that's ketchup, that's ketchup. So he goes, and she was out there with a big fur on, and he went over and shook his head. He said, go home, wash that ketchup out. And anyway, they hated him a lot. Said, and he would walk through the crowd as he was walking back out, like you dirt, But that was all part of the act. I mean, if you knew my dad, they called him, a lot of people said he was just a gentle giant. He was the most lovable guy that you had ever meet. Not a bad bone in his body, but that was the act and everything. He said he would close the door to go into the dressing room just before one of those big metal chairs hit him. So he liked, and he would have to, sometimes they would have to sneak him out of a stadium because people were lined up ready to kill him. I mean, he done his job good.
How long did he wrestle for?
I really don't know. A lot of that, he kind of stopped that when I was a little child, so 7, 8 years, whatever. He's in a magazine called The Wrestling Eye, an old thing. I think Hulk Hogan's on the front, and they got a feature inside.
Did he? I'm terrible for. I don't know near as much of the history as I should. In the 50s, did he wrestle under any of the AWA? And did he ever wrestle under any of the alliances or federations, or was he primarily independent? Or?
No, he did. He was signed by some federation of some sort. I don't remember or know, but might be able to find it. I don't know that. And he wrestled against the names of the day. I mean,
what are some of the big names you mentioned?
Well, The only one I can really think of right now was there was a Jackie Fargo, and I think he was younger, and he went on past when my dad retired out of that. But there was other names, I hear them, but I don't really remember. Gorgeous George. I don't know who that is.
That's amazing. If you're right, that's.
But he wrestled against a bunch of people like that. My dad was as close to becoming as a Renaissance man as you could, because he could paint. He could. There was nothing he couldn't do, and he had an interest in everything. His only failure was probably he loved music, but he was kind of tone deaf. But other than that, he was a Renaissance man. You'd be surprised at everything that he did and could do.
Was he, well, Gorgeous George, that's a name, right? That's one of the all-time greats, Hall of Famer. You know, your dad, the King Cobra, like, is he, you mentioned he's in a wrestling magazine with Hulk Hogan, like his bracelets, is that stuff still floating around? 8x10s of him.
We still got all of that. He had a short jacket, and he had the big long one, and that's family heirlooms. We're never going to lose them. You know, we still got those.
That's fair. I'm going to look them up for sure. I'm sure there's stuff of him floating around. I know you mentioned only the 3 channels, but ever, to your knowledge, did he ever find himself on TV locally? Or
he was on, especially out of was it WSC or what? Out of Nashville. They broadcast a lot of it, and you could see him on TV.
Did he ever go outside of Kentucky? Did he wrestle in Nashville?
Yeah, he did Tennessee, and he would do other surrounding states, in Southeast or whatever. But it's not like today, not the big tour kind of a thing, because when he wasn't doing that, he still had a day job. He was an embalmer for 38 years with Lindsay Funeral Home. So, I don't know, maybe that's an odd combination, but...
No, Undertaker was big. Paul Bearer.
Yeah, that's true.
Gosh, just thinking though about to have been a fly on the wall, some of those stories, you know, not that, I love modern day professional wrestling. I think, you know, we have some of the greatest athletes in the world. Josh Alexander, I think, might be the best wrestler working today, but you know, to have seen King Cobra, you know, had people pulling guns, riots, chairs being thrown. You don't see that anymore.
That wasn't staged. That was real.
You had to be.
You know.
You had to be pretty tough to be wrestling and have a gun.
He would just make everybody act. He was in a tag team. He told me about once, and him and his buddy, they were both equally evil guys. And they whooped up on the local.
Do you remember the name of his partner?
No, I think I've got a poster at home that might have it on it. I saved some of that stuff. But they finally whipped the other guys, and they threw him out of the ring. Then he turned and looked at his partner and threw him out of the ring. And then the ref is up there like, oh no. So he threw the ref out of the ring. He was hated that night. So his job was well done, you know.
And
he had a big following. He had fan clubs and stuff. He was big in his day, you know.
To your knowledge, I don't know if you know this, was your father, did he become a Freemason, and was he active in lodge while he was a professional wrestler?
Yeah.
Okay. And
actually before he was.
Okay.
Yeah, he come in, I think, pretty early, probably 21, 2 or something, I don't know.
Did he, to your knowledge, did he use, like being able to travel, obviously not like we have now, but when he was traveling for shows, would he also visit Masonic lodges at the time? Was he able to combine them, or?
I don't know. He never spoke of that. I know he did visit other Masonic lodges, but I don't know if that was in conjunction with traveling with wrestling. I don't know.
Because it'd be so fascinating, you know, Saturday night, a whole bunch of Masons are at the wrestling show, they see King Cobra being hated, and then the next day, you know, he's in lodge with them. It'd be kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, maybe he should be third base in third degree.
Well, yeah.
No. He never held an office in lodge. We have another lodge here. It's 127. Like I said, it's about 9/10 of a mile in a straight line from here. And I was raised in that lodge, and we were voting on something. And my dad was there all the time. He was regular there. And they asked the senior deacon, has all voted who's eligible? He normally would say, all save myself, cast your vote and whatnot. He goes, well, Lloyd Kelsey, which would have been Lloyd Kelsey Sr., said, he hasn't voted. And the master and all the other members there looked. The master says, Lloyd, you got to vote. You know, you're in here, you by law, you have to vote. He goes, I got to be a member here first. And they go, you're not a member? Because he had been there so often, they thought he was a member, and he just never. So he eventually became a dual member with halfway 852 and Paducah Lodge 127. Yeah.
That is very, very cool. You know, I'm going to post this online, obviously. I'm located in Windsor. Anybody in the Windsor wrestling community, or anybody who watches who loves professional wrestling, if you know anything about King Cobra from, where was he built from? Did they build him from Paducah, Kentucky? Like when he was...
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
King Cobra from Paducah, Kentucky. Throw a comment in, let me know, because I love it when my favorite things combine. And
it might be pretty obscure because it's not as big as the wrestlers are today.
Sometimes people,
at the same time, it was back in the 50s too.
I mean, wrestling was huge in the 50s. You look at the houses that are being sold. I mean, obviously there wasn't the pay-per-view, there wasn't the pay-per-view market and the cable market, but in terms of houses and ticket sales.
I'll tell you what, he could have, not saying he didn't, he might, or at least he was in their thing crossed, their era, their years, he might have wrestled against The Rock's father. He was a...
Okay, yeah.
Possibly. I don't know that, but...
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, because that would have been near the tail end of your father's career, but it certainly would have been possible. I mean, and a lot of people, I'm sure, came through, right? What was he like? Were you ever around him at a time when he was in character?
Well, only if, of course, I was little.
Yeah.
But no, he never carried that character out like at church or at the funeral home or anything like that. He was just Lloyd. They knew who he was.
Yeah.
More people called him Cobra than Mr. Kelsey, kind of a thing.
I just think that's so cool. That's probably my most favorite thing, I'm sure, will be tomorrow in the barn raising, but getting a chance to meet, somebody whose father was involved in professional wrestling I know you're saying he wasn't a big star, whatever it is, but that's not nothing. Wrestling out of Nashville, wrestling Kentucky.
Since we're here on the wrong thing, I'm sure you're going to have to crop a lot of my mistakes and stuff.
I'm not cropping anything. It's all staying on.
That's not good because I'm terrible in front of a camera. I know I'm the worst. Not everybody in Kentucky is like me. Okay.
You're doing great. I promise you.
But you said that you had wrestled a bit.
Yeah, I'm with. I train out of Can-Am Wrestling School in Windsor, Ontario, and I've been lucky enough to do some work as a referee with Impact Wrestling. That's something maybe I'll throw a link up, but that's something I'm very fond of and have a lot of fun memories of. I did an interview with one of the people I trained with, or really one of my trainers, Dan Pisano, wrestles as El Reverso, and I put that on because there's a lot of connections you can make between professional wrestling and Freemasonry. Certainly, the most obvious would be the secrecy behind it. There are, especially back in your father's day, kayfabe was the term, right? People were very strict about not, making sure that the fans didn't see behind the curtain and they viewed the heels as heels and the faces as faces. But even the process of training as a professional wrestler, there's a lot of parallels between Freemasonry. Like one of the things I talked about, I don't know if you can comment on this at all, is just the importance of breathing during a degree. So often you'll see, it could be a candidate, but oftentimes it's an officer, somebody doing a bit of work. They're so nervous or riled up about their work, when wrestling, we use the term blown up, which before I joined professional wrestling, before I started training, I'd seen it happen a lot. I didn't have the term for it. They would get so nervous and so, you would see them midway through their lecture have to stop and take a big breath and pause, and I realize now they're getting themselves blown up.
Some of the biggest problems and obligations and stuff, people not putting the pause, they're putting too many words in there for them to repeat or something. It's just little things you learn as you go, and after you've done it a little bit, you get a little more laid back about it. And like I say, we like to keep our obligations, and a few things we want them exact, but some of the others, if you lose it a little bit, just put it in your own words. As long as you convey the meaning, that's okay. It's still going to be the best degree they've ever seen.
That's so, absolutely. And that's such an important thing, is
jumping back
keep going.
I just can't let it go without telling this little anecdote. My sister, she's 4 years older than me. When she was little, my mom had her up in her lap at one of the wrestling matches, and this man and his wife was right in front of him. And of course, my dad was the bad guy. So it's to be expected. This guy was calling him a SOB and everything under the sun, just cussing him out, whatever. And she would stop that. She was little. Yeah. Stop that. That's my daddy. and he kind of like, what? He went on back to getting into the fight. He's following it and everything, cussing my dad again. Stop that. That's my daddy. Well, she had the old Coke bottle, them big kind of half green glass looking thing. It was empty. She hit this guy in the head, just pong, like that. Said it rung all over the state. Everybody, he was like, stop. Like, what? He looked, and his wife said, well, she told you that was her daddy.